And go to our lesson today. And in today's lesson, or the next few weeks, I'm planning on doing some messages kind of geared towards the kids a little bit. And so hopefully the kids will enjoy these. And pretty much all I'm going to be having on the screen today, I'm losing all my papers here, are basically I'm just going to kind of use some visual illustrations to go along with what the Bible is talking about. In the Bible, it uses a lot of things in nature. It uses things within the animal kingdom as illustration for all of us. God wants us learning from different things in nature. We're going to look at a passage in a little bit that wisdom is something that we can learn from things that we see in nature, from some things we can observe in nature. Look what it says in Proverbs 6, in verse 6. It says, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard, and when wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yea, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hand to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man." And there's the ant is only mentioned 2 times in the Bible. We're going to look at the other mention here in just a minute. But notice when it says, go to the ant. Okay? Go to the ant. The whole book of Proverbs is trying to teach us wisdom. It wants us to learn lessons from some things within nature. And in fact, turn over to Proverbs chapter 1 in verse 20. This is where we're kind of getting the introduction to the book of Proverbs. The whole purpose of it is to teach wisdom and instruction. It's like a father writing to a son, and he's writing things that he believes is going to help him to have a wise son, so he'll have a good future, make good choices. And it says in verse 20, "Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets." Okay? Now this is for the people who always want to go literal in the Bible. Okay, go out in the streets and see if you hear wisdom literally crying. Does wisdom have vocal cords? Obviously, this is figurative, but at the same time, anybody who has an ounce of wisdom knows exactly what this is talking about. For example, if you ever go to a city, in fact, when me and Lana were in Philadelphia recently, wisdom was crying out to me, "Don't do drugs," as we observed a man all hunched over, doing all this weird stuff because he was high on something. And as I observed that, I received instruction. And wisdom was yelling at me, "Don't ever do drugs." And I saw that and I said, "Yes, sir. I will not ever do drugs because I don't want that kind of thing happening to me." And so we have things like that all throughout our life. It says, "She crieth in the chief places of concourse. In the opening of the gates, in the city, she uttereth her words, saying, How long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity, and the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge." Notice it specifically mentions, and I don't believe this is the only place wisdom cries out. I think she even does out in remote areas. But it's interesting that it mentions the city, because if you want to go somewhere where wisdom is screaming, "Don't be stupid. How long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity?" Go to a city where you have the druggies, you have all the homeless people, you've got the sodomites all over the place. You got a little bit of everything there. And it teaches you all kinds of things. And it says, "Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you." So all throughout life, God has things out there that he wants us learning from. There are things in nature. And he specifically mentions the ant. And I went to the screensaver here. But I've got some pictures here of ants that you can just kind of watch as we talk about some of these things. But ants, what are ants kind of known for? Yeah, working. Everybody kind of said at the same time. Hard workers. That's kind of what they are known for. That's definitely something the Bible is going to point out here. But one of the main things about ants too, with them being hard working, that we are supposed to receive instruction from as we go to them. Notice what it says in verse 7. It says, "Which having no guide, overseer, or ruler." Did you know that ants don't need someone telling them to do? Okay? Now, you little kids especially, Right now, you probably need to be told what to do. Your parents have to tell you, go to bed at a certain time. They have to tell you, brush your teeth. They have to tell you to take a bath. They have to tell you to clean your room. They have to tell you to pick up your stuff, eat your vegetables. Don't just go, living on a diet of candy and soda. Parents, you have to tell your kids all that stuff. But eventually, hopefully, you won't have to tell your kids those things. I'm hoping Kelly maybe learned a lesson. She was at Bible school this week and got involved in a chug-a-thon where they had to drink soda the fastest. And apparently she threw up after drinking soda really fast. And, obviously a little girl's stomach is not able to handle a can of soda at rapid speed like that. And so, hopefully she learned, hey, I probably shouldn't drink too much soda too fast, or I have bad experience and I throw up. But some people, they don't learn. They don't learn from things. But when you are young, your parents do. They have to tell you everything. But you know what's supposed to happen as you get older is not that your parents quit telling you what to do, but that your parents don't need to tell you what to do. Because the reality is, as long as you're under their roof, you're in their authority. And even when you're not under their roof, you ought to follow the instructions that they taught you. You ought to learn from, hopefully you gained wisdom. The point of growing up and getting out of the house is not that I don't have to follow the rules anymore. No, the attitude should be, hey, I'm grown up. I don't need somebody telling me to do things that everyone should do. Like go to church, like get a job, be responsible, take care of yourself, don't do drugs, don't get involved in fornication and all these different sins. When you're younger, you need that guide, overseer, ruler. But an aunt, we need to learn from them. They don't need someone telling them what to do. And especially when it comes to work. Because again, kids, if you let them, they probably wouldn't do school. Your kids are all going to be excited about school when they start it. But then eventually, they're going to be like, I hate school. This is boring. I don't want to do it. It's too hard. They would rather play video games and watch TV all day. But then, you got to teach them, no, you got to be responsible. And then, hopefully, someday, when they grow up, you're not going to have to be giving your son who's in his 20s a wake-up call telling him to go to work. And I've known people like that. I remember talking to one guy. He said he helped this one guy get a job. He needed a job, and he was in his 20s, and he did. Somebody gave him a job, and he didn't show up on time for work the first day. And then, the person who had hired him told that guy about it. It's like, yeah, he didn't even show up on time for work. So he calls this guy. He's like, hey, I helped you get this job. What are you doing being late in your first day of work? He's like, my mom didn't wake me up. It's like, you're in your 20s. Your mom still needs to wake you up. You know what? Somebody like that needs to go to the aunt. The aunt doesn't have to tell them to get to work. The aunt they don't need that. Titus 1:8. Notice what it says here. It says, but we know that the law is good if a man use it lawfully, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners, for unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, for men stealers, for liars, for perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine. So notice right here that the law is for the lawless. Did you know your parents shouldn't have to make certain rules? Your parents, like I said, I can't think of any good ones off the top of my head right now. But when you have a lot of rules, it's because you do a lot of bad things. And especially as you get older, I shouldn't have to tell, when my kids get their driver's licenses, I shouldn't have to tell them, hey, one of the rules you have to follow, no going driving by houses and smashing mailboxes with a baseball bat. Okay? That should just be obvious that you don't do vandalism. Are you saying, do you not have a rule about that in your house? Well, I haven't had to talk to my kids about that. But again, if they were to do something like that, yeah, we're probably going to have a rule. We're probably going, what's the punishment in your house for whatever? I don't know. So far, there's a lot of things we haven't had to worry about. What would you do if you caught your kid doing this? And my thing is, I hope I never find out. There's been situations before where there's been things happen in other places, and my kids are like, well, what would you have done if that were me? And it's just like, I don't like to think about that. there's some things as a father I hope I never have to judge, that I never have to make a judgment on that, because hopefully my kids won't be just unruly, unrestrained, riotous animals. Hopefully they'll be people who don't really need much of a guide, overseer, or ruler. Hopefully they will go to the ant, and and the sooner you show wisdom to kids, the sooner that you'll probably be able to be without a governor. And a governor, that's somebody who just kind of restrains you. That's something that keeps you in line. And again, hopefully you do good. Just this week at the Summer Splash, my kids are seeing all the action everywhere. And, Lana was with me for a while, and they're just kind of wanting to go and do things. And, and I was kind of giving them a little more freedom as time went on. But, if the first time I'd have let Lana go do anything, she just wanders off and gets lost somewhere, then you know what? She's got to stay right next to me all the time. Just if every time we do anything and she just gets a little bit of freedom, she's just getting lost, getting in trouble, stealing from food vendors and things like that. I can't let her out of my sight. And a lot of times too, you have your parents who brag on their strictness and things like that. But, again, I'm all for strictness if necessary, but are you sure your strictness isn't because you basically have a prison because you have, convicts living in your house? Because, prisons have to have a lot of rules and fences and things because of the people that are living in those places. And so, yeah, when you have prisons full of like the murders and the real bad one, you have what they call maximum security. So is your home as strict as it is because you need a maximum security home because your kids are that rotten? Some homes need that. But there's other homes, they can have like a country club prison where like the rich people and the non-dangerous people go to. You know why? Because, yeah, their kids aren't perfect, but if they give them a little bit of freedom, they're probably not going to burn down a city or something like that. And so I wanted to show you guys too this video, because another thing about ants too, so everybody mentioned the hard work, right? Well, notice also, just when, I'll just have this playing as I'm talking. Ants, they're always working, but they're not just working just for activity. Like kids, especially too, they're always exerting energy. The problem is it's just not usually productive energy. When they're real little, most of their energy creates more work. Okay, and you know what, parents, when your kids get to that age and they want to start helping you, there's a time period where their help creates more work. Okay, I think you all know how that is. I would encourage you to deal with that, let them help, because eventually, if you train them in that, their work will become productive work, their effort will become productive, and then they will be a help. But you do have to go through that training period where it actually creates more work. Some parents are so lazy, though, they never do that with their kids, and then their kids just get older and older and older and can't do anything, because it's just easier today if you do everything for them. But tomorrow is going to be harder. So just while they're wearing you out today with their help, just understand if you can endure that, tomorrow will be easier. That's just kind of another side note right there. But ants, notice verse 8, it says, provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. Now turn over to chapter 30 of Proverbs in verse 24. But ants, one of the things they're known for, so their work, it's productive work. What they're doing is they are preparing for the future. They gather their meat in the summer. They do it when it's good. They do it during the best time. They don't wait until the winter when it's going to be a lot more difficult. No, summer is the time to be storing things up, and that's exactly what they do. It says in verse 24, there be 4 things which are little upon the earth, but they are exceeding wise. The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. So notice that the Bible says there's 4 things. We're just mentioning the one today. It says they're small, but they are exceeding wise. And what does it mention? They gather their meat in the summer. Same thing it mentions in Proverbs chapter 6. Ants prepare for the future. And the kids, adults, everyone needs to listen to this, because many young people make a lot of foolish decisions they have very difficult lives because they only think about today. I said going out and busting mailboxes, that would probably be fun. I don't know, I'm assuming that's why people do it. The problem is, you get caught, you get a criminal record. Now, I don't know if that's a misdemeanor or a felony or whatever, but either way, you get those things on your record, you're going to have a tougher time getting a job. You're probably going to get a worse job. You might want to get approved for different things. You might want to get into a certain kind of school. But if you have all these negative things on your record, then guess what? You're probably going to lose opportunity. So great, you had fun today. You and your friends, you got a good laugh going out there vandalizing things, but your future has now been negatively affected, and you've got to be thinking about the future. If you think about the future, you'll take education more seriously. Again, it's hard to get young people thinking about that stuff. When I was a kid, I remember just my biggest motivation for getting my homework done was so I could not have to do homework when I got home, and I could get to the video games as soon as possible. Okay? Now, I'm glad I got my schoolwork done, but the reality is, if the goal is video games, that's not the best motivation. I wasn't usually thinking that much about my future. And I'm not saying you can't use things like that as motivation for kids, but at the end of the day, if when they're a teenager, video games is still their motivation, and they're a high schooler, and video games is still their motivation, watch out, because that might be their motivation as adults too. And I'm all for, having some relaxation time and fun and things like that. But at the same time, we've got some people that they are not thinking about their future. They're not motivated. They're not preparing for anything. They're not responsible. And it's because they're just addicted to that stuff, and they've taken it too far, and it's not good. If you're thinking about the future, you're going to do a better job in choosing a mate. You're not just going to pick a girl just because of looks. Girls, you're not going to pick a guy just because of looks or something like that. You're going to be looking at personal character. You're going to be thinking long term. You're going to be thinking about the fact that, they're going to bear your children. They are going to help raise your children. You're stuck with them for life. I mean, there's all kinds of things you got to factor in. Guys, you got to take into consideration that your wife can easily leave you for no reason today. And you will more than likely be stuck paying alimony, child support, and all those things. And you can be ruined financially. I mean, absolutely ruined financially, just if your wife decides to ruin you. So you know what? You better get a good one. You better get one that's got some character and will not take advantage of our sick, twisted, feministy world and destroy your life. And there's ways to spot those women. There really are, if you'll just have a little bit of wisdom. Okay, and we're not talking about spotting the bad women out there today, but we have examples in Proverbs too. Let me tell you, wisdom is crying in the streets when it comes to that. And so let me just throw in one bonus there. Okay, if she's like your stereotypical Instagram girl type, forget it. Okay, just absolutely forget those people. They're not worth it. But anyway, thinking about the future, that's what an ant does. If you think about the future, you'll make better financial decisions. You want to know one of the things that's always a crisis, and we're in an election year, so they're going to be talking a lot about it, and that is Social Security. We got to fund Social Security, otherwise all these old people are going to be out in the street. You want to know why we have Social Security in our country today? Because Americans don't think about the future. We don't prepare. We don't save. It's not a part of our culture. And so as a result of that, the government has had to kind of create the safety net for us. And the problem when they do these things, there's always going to be a ton of waste included in there too. That's the way it works. But the reality is, most Americans, we've not gone to the ant. And as a nation, our government does not go to the ant. Our government is not preparing for the future at all, and we're already paying for it. Right now, we're paying for it through inflation, for sure. That's one area. But anyway, the ant too said it prepares for the difficult days during the easy days and not the other way around. And some things are better to do while you're young. Okay? When you're young, that's when you're able to work harder, you're able to work the extra hours, all that kind of stuff. You don't want to wait until you're older to do that. That's a really bad idea. But the ants, they've got that figured out. Look at verse 9 of Proverbs chapter 6. It says, how long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? And when wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yea, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man. So notice ants too, they're hardworking. They're not like the lazy. And this particular section here, this proverb where he says, go to the ant, who's he talking to? The sluggard. So understand, sometimes as parents, we are going to have to recognize character flaws in our children, and we're going to have to try to share instruction with them. We're going to have to try to share wisdom to try to change them. And so here, this particular proverb, it's talking to the sluggard. And you know what you ought to do sometimes? Forget this don't judge mentality. You should take your kids to cities, and you should point out the homeless people. And we all think homeless people, they're just the victims, they're just poor, the system stacked against them. I guarantee you probably a vast majority of homeless people you see in the city are probably on drugs. And that's one of the reasons they're homeless. Again, I'm sure there's exceptions out there, but there's a lot of help in this country if people want help. There really is. Yeah, you're not going to be able to, you might not be able to live in a mansion and have all the nicest conveniences and things like that, but if you need food and shelter, you can pretty much get it in this country. Yet, cities are full of these people. I've been hearing about some of the statistics about homelessness in California, and it's just crazy. And it almost makes me thankful to live in a state that has brutal winters, because it keeps a lot of that homeless population away. They all go to the nice climates. And so it's like, that's one of the big advantages that we have in places that have some bad winters. It's like it kills the bugs and it keeps away the homeless riffraff and all that. And again, listen, if somebody is a victim, if somebody is wanting to work hard and get ahead, I want to help those people. If somebody's lazy and just wanting another handout so they can get more drugs, I'm not interested in that. I'm not going to help people in that situation. But sometimes with people like that, you need to say, how long? Like, you sluggard. Okay? You sluggard, you need to learn from these things. And this is what he did. He said, so shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man. Let's look at some verses in Proverbs. We're going to stay here in Proverbs and jump around a little bit. But look at chapter 12, verse 27. It says, the slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting, but the substance of a diligent man is precious. Notice the slothful man. He's wasteful. They waste things. Okay? Back when we had food pantry, I remember going and visiting somebody who had come to our food pantry. I remember seeing a box of food just sitting out in the rain. The only stuff he took was just the instant stuff that took no effort. All the vegetables, fruit, anything you actually had to cook, it just all went to waste. They didn't care. But there was a few good things in there that you could just open up a package and eat. And he did take that stuff. They were all about that kind of thing. Lazy people are wasteful people. You would think, oh, no, it's because they're poor. No, they're wasteful. You can go in their homes and you will see the empty beer cans everywhere. You go find some of the trashiest houses around here, and you know what you'll find all over the yard and the front porch? Beer cans, cigarette butts. I can't afford those things. And you know what? They can't afford those things either, but everybody's got their priorities. And these places they get trashed, they get nasty for a reason, and they're wasteful people. But the substance of the diligent man, doesn't say the rich. Some people are diligent. Some people have done very well not making a lot of money. There are people out there, I've known people out there who they did not make huge salaries. I've worked with people who didn't even make, or who had the same job I did, yet they were doing better off financially because a lot of times they were handy people. They knew how to do a lot of things themselves, which saved them a lot of money. They were hardworking, they were creative, They found ways to do things that were just very productive, and they accomplished a lot because they were diligent and they used everything they had. Their substance was precious. Proverbs 18:9 says, he also that is slothful in his work is brother to him that is a great waster. Just showing how these things are related. You go find the lazy guy who doesn't work very hard, who's wasting time, you know what? He's going to waste his substance too. He's not going to be diligent in those things. Proverbs 21:25 says, the desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. So notice, some people, they just refuse to work. But they still want things. They still desire things. A lot of these people you see out there always protesting. Okay? Isn't it interesting how all the protests for more whatever, it's always on weekdays, right? And isn't it interesting too that, you know, it's like, why is it always these same type of people? Because you know what? The other people are out there working. Most people have jobs. They can't do that stuff during those times. But yet these lazy people, they are the most high demand people. The hardworking people, they're not out there demanding things from the government. While these people are wasting their time holding signs, protesting, asking the government to give them things, the rest of the country who actually has those things, you know, the reason they have those things is because they're not looking to the government to get them. They're out there working. And so, yeah, their counter-protests aren't going to be as big. In fact, they're probably not even going to exist. That is our counter-protest. While these communists are out there protesting, carrying their signs, we are out working, accomplishing things, doing something, building something. And unfortunately, you know, our politicians are a bunch of crooks, and they are stealing our money and giving it to these people all the time. And I am not for that at all. But Proverbs 22:13 says, the slothful man saith, there is a lion without. I shall be slain in the streets. What's that showing us? They make excuses. There's always something. They've always got a reason. And I'm just, you know, Zoomers. Again, you know, these people have obviously always been around, okay? This isn't a Gen Z thing because this was written way before Gen Z. But, you know, they always have an excuse for stuff. I mean, I've talked to people before, you know, they're trying to get jobs, but then it's just like they couldn't make it to the interview because, you know, their wife had a yoga class or something like that. It's just like, you know, what is wrong with you? You know, go figure out how to do these things, overcome these things, prioritize these things. Just everything is an excuse. You know, you know, and it's too, they always get fired from their job too because they've missed so much work, and it's always because of a funeral, a hospital visit or something like that. But it's like, no, that was the problem, was that was like your 15th time. You know, what about the 14 times you missed because you just didn't feel good because you were having a video game marathon the night before and you were too tired to get up? You know, that's the real reason you're getting fired. And I've worked with those people before. They were like, yeah, I'm not going into work tomorrow because they had something fun they wanted to do. And they would, you know, and in the different workplaces, you know, they had like so many you could do. And they would always take it up to the edge. And then finally they would get serious when they were like one away from getting fired. And then something legitimate would come up. And then they would act like a victim. It's like, no, you're not a victim. You're just lazy. You have excuses. It says in Proverbs 24:30. And this is another, parents, take your kids to these places because they're all over this area we're about to read. And let them receive instruction. Okay? In fact, this is, you know, while there are many reasons to take your kids out soul winning, this is another reason to take your kid out soul winning, because they will get a first-hand, close-up look of this many times, and you can let wisdom speak to them. But it says in verse 30, I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw, and I considered it well. I looked upon it, and received instruction. So notice, he's explaining basically, you know, a field that should have food growing in it. And he said, it's not, it's all overgrown, the wall's broken down. He said, I looked at it. He's observing it, and instruction came to me. You know what his instruction was? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man. She's like, you know what? If you don't take care of things, if you don't maintain your field, if you don't maintain your garden, if you don't pull the weeds, if you don't build up the walls, it's going to get overgrown, it's going to become fruitless, and you're going to be poor as a result of it. That was the instruction he got. And you know what? Whenever you take your kids up to a house and you go up there, and as you observe the house, you notice the lawn is all overgrown. You notice that, everything's kind of falling apart. The place is trashed. It's a mess. Before you get up to that house, say, you see that porch up there? I'll bet we're going to see beer cans up there. I'll bet we're going to see cigarette butts all over the place. I'll bet when these people come to the door, they're going to look like they haven't shut. I'm not telling you, I might be exaggerating a little bit in how judgmental you want to be. But at the same time, you need to teach your kids, hey, you see all these negative things? These are a symptom of a real problem. They're lazy. Drinking is not going to help you out. That doesn't make you work harder. It makes you lazy. The reason a lot of people drink, it's a way to relieve stress. That's a natural stress that they have because there's something instinctive in them, like an ant telling them to go to work. But fortunately, ants don't have substances they can turn to kind of turn that off. You know what they do? They just work. They do exactly what they're supposed to do, and that's what we need to do. But we've got all these substances that help us, mask those things. And no, you need that stress. There's something instinctively in all of us that says we should be working. We should be accomplishing something. There's something that's instinctively in us when the sun comes up. There's something in us that says get out of bed. Go out there and do something. And you know what? You can find drugs and things that'll take that away, but you need that. Because if you don't, if you don't listen to those things, eventually your poverty is going to come. Things are going to get out of control for you. And so we don't want to be slothful. The soul of the sluggard desire and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. Proverbs 24, the sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold. Therefore he shall beg and harvest and have nothing. And you know what? Right now, there's probably a lot of people not showing up for workplaces because it's hot out. You know what? You got to work when it's hot. You got to work when it's cold. I'd rather work, I'm more likely to be the one that's saying it's cold out. That's me. I'd rather work in the heat than in the cold any day. That's me. But either way, you know what? We ought to be able to do both. We need to be able to handle both. That's how things are supposed to go. But another last thing about the ant we'll look at real quick. You might have noticed this in these pictures and videos we saw, but ants work well together. Ants work well together. They work good in groups. And again, having no guide, overseer, ruler. But yet we see them carrying things together. We see them moving things together. We see these ant colonies working together. You know what you don't see in ant colonies? Like these tribal wars and things going on, and fights and gang battles and turf challenges and all that kind of stuff. You don't see that in there. They're hardworking. Ecclesiastes 4:9 says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow, but woe unto him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if 2 lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. And that is something, one of the reasons people have all the issues they do today, they don't know how to work with other people. Well, this gives me anxiety. Getting around people gives me anxiety. I have this problem. This person triggers me. They said a trigger word. They did a microaggression. This bothers me about them. I can't, it just, you know what? We got to learn how to live in a society where there are people who are not exactly like us. And we got to learn how to work well with people. That goes for in your church. That goes for in your community. That goes for in the workplace. It goes for within your family. You know what? Your kids need to learn how to live with each other. If you can't learn how to live with your family, what do you think is going to happen when you go out in the world? You're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to get along with your neighbors. You're not going to be able to get along with your coworkers. We have to learn to work together. And ants, they do. It's pretty impressive what they can accomplish together. And you know what? You ought to go to the ant. You know what you ought to do? maybe get your kids an ant farm or something like that so they can observe and maybe gain some wisdom from that. And when they're not getting along with their siblings, when they're not getting along with other people, say, how do you like being dumber than those ants? You know what? They figured out how to get along with people. They figured out how to work together. They're always preparing. They're always working hard. We can't let an ant outdo us. But you know what? They're small, but like it says in Proverbs, they are exceeding wise, and so let's learn from the ants. With that, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this lesson and from the things that we can learn from in nature. I pray you'll help all of us to have ears that are always listening to the voice of wisdom. I pray that we will receive instructions from the things we see in nature and learn the lesson you'd have us to learn. In your name we pray. Amen. You are